Good morning, Stewart's Chapel. This is Brother Don Pierson here in Don Counts, and we're over here on the Elk River at the Harris's place. Beautiful place to be. This is Friday morning's devotion, and I guess even since last time I talked to you, or last time we filmed anyway, I realized I needed to take a step back in the book of Joel a little bit and share with you some thoughts. This will probably take a few days. I don't think I can get it done here on Friday. So I want to go back and look at a few verses. Joel chapter 1, verse 4, and then a few other verses from Joel. What the chewing locust left, the swarming locust has eaten. What the swarming locust left, the crawling locust has eaten. And what the crawling locust left, the consuming locust has eaten. And then verse 7, talking about the enemy, the locust. He has laid waste my vine, ruined my fig tree. He has stripped it bare and thrown it away. Its branches are made white. And then skipping down to verse 12, the vine has dried up and the fig tree has withered, the pomegranate tree, the palm tree also, and the apple tree. All the trees of the field are withered. Surely joy has withered away from the sons of men. And then over in chapter 2, verse 25 through 27. So I will restore to you the years that the swarming locust has eaten, the crawling locust, the consuming locust, and the chewing locust, my great army which I sent among you. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied, and praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dwelt wondrously with you. And my people shall never be put to shame. Then you shall know that I am in the midst of Israel. I am the Lord your God, and there is no other. My people shall never be put to shame. In one of the devotions, I shared with you that Joel is in 3 parts. Now, they're not just 3 chapters. There's 3 segments. There's what has happened, the past. That's what, and they're still living in that past. What has happened and what has come and their present reality. Then there is the challenge for that day, and that takes over the middle section of Scripture. And then there is about what could be. So I pretty much the past, present, and what can be your future. Over the last few weeks, and literally over the last couple of years, in various ministry situations, I've watched as individuals try to recover from being stripped bare to the place where they are withered. Their joy is withered, their life is withered. In some cases, I've watched God take them from their past, where there's that decisive moment in a present nowness, and I've watched in some what God can do, the restoring. Also, unfortunately, in my life, I've had to be with families and individuals in the midst of suicide far more times than I care to think about. The first time that I can remember ever that happening was in North Carolina as a pastor. I've struggled with my own family in the midst of suicide. I really want to camp out over the next few days talking about this issue of withering away. And so for this one, because there's so much here that I want to unpack, for this one I want to talk to you about something that I learned from the forestry department. Years ago, when I first bought my first farm, I wanted to manage the farm for the timber. So I contacted the forestry department. They sent an expert out to me, and they told me that I needed to feed the healthy trees, and I needed to get rid of the unhealthy, or the unwanted trees. And evidently the guy, when he came out, was pretty much aware that I'm pretty cheap, or like to take the most inexpensive way out if possible. He shared with me that there were ways to do the culling. One, I could cut and poison. That's an expensive way, by the way. You don't cut the tree down, you just cut the tree a little bit and you pour poison. Poison's expensive for trees. I could cut the trees down. I mean, just literally cut them down, which is very time consuming, creates a major mess. Or I could score. I could score the trees. I don't know whether that's a language or a word or terminology that you are used to when it comes to tree, but I could score. You see, a tree, when you look at the bark, has 5 elements or 5 parts. But the outer 3 layers are all 3 types of bark. Now there's the outer bark, which is the protective bark. There's the inner bark, which is a membrane, very, very thin, but is known as giving its life. It feeds the tree. That little bitty element right beyond the bark. You would think that would be on the inside. You see, the very center is dead wood. That's the core bark. That's dead wood. There's no life that goes through the center. But the second part is that element, that inner bark that provides life. The third part, which is a little bit thicker, it provides growth. Now, it provides, or like the hormones to the tree. Now, that comes, is fed by that middle bark, that second bark. So when you score a tree, you take a chainsaw or an axe and you just cut it in till you cut in past the first 2 bark, the protective bark, and then the life-giving bark, that small thing. You just have to cut all the way around. And you do that all the way around that tree. You score the tree all the way around and you move to the next one. It's a very slow death for that tree. That tree will begin to die from the top. All of its smaller branches all the way out will begin to fall. First, they will die because it dies from the outer part in, begins to drop its branches slowly but surely. The decay takes over and it falls. Pretty soon, the larger branches begin to fall until finally all you have is just this trunk of the tree standing tall, but it's dead. And then finally, it will fall. Locusts do that. They cut into the very life-giving part of the tree and causes it to wither. It's a slow death. A slow death. That is the image that God is describing in the book of Joel. Now, generally, in fact, it seems to be universally, you can Google it, I did. Once that part of the tree is damaged, there is generally no hope for that tree. It's gone. Eventually, it's going to die, especially if it's all the way around. If it's been scored all the way around, that tree's going to die because there's nothing to give it life anymore. But that's the amazing thing about God. Where there seems no hope, where it seems impossible, God steps in. And that's what he does here with Israel, with God's people. He says to them, if you will turn to me with all your heart, if you will seek me, that's the middle part, that's what they need to do now, I will restore. I will not only restore, I will give back life where the locusts have eaten away the life. So here's the first message about this section I want to leave with you. Our God is a God of hope. And with God, there's nothing impossible. It only becomes impossible when we reject the possibility of what God can do. Don't do that, my friends. Love you, Stewart's Chapel.